2017. This year was poppin' for everyone and everything. Games were dominating the world with unique visuals and captivating stories. Movies were making ludicrous amounts of money and spawning hundreds of memes, and no one knew what an AI was. Not to mention the huge amount of attention anime was receiving at this point in time, with shows like My Hero Academia and Attack on Titan both releasing their second seasons inside a year. And these shows would later become unstoppable forces with fans spreading like viruses, for better or for worse. Now let's fast forward a bit. It is now 2021. My friends had been telling me over and over to watch a certain anime from 2017, Black Clover. I had heard of it before and expressed little interest in it, mainly because of what I've heard about it. It was a shonen, took place in a medieval setting, and thrived on a magic system. If you're regularly indulgent in anime, all of these can sound like a red flag. Not so much the first one, but the last two for sure. When you hear magic attached to an anime, your brain sort of automatically associates it with bad things. You know, isekai, self-insert main character, major fan service, whatever the f this is. With such vague information, Black Clover inadvertently sounds unappealing. However, the idea that it was a shonen caught my attention. I had been watching shonen since I was a kid, and it was one of the main types of anime I watched. As a result, curiosity got the better of me. So, I checked it out. I tried to convince myself that it was serviceable at best, and I think all of the negative stereotypes I attached to the show was the cause. I do more reading than I do watching, so I couldn't enjoy the story at my own pace. I binged through a good chunk of episodes and it was fun, but I couldn't tell if I actually liked it or if I was just watching it out of habit. So, like any responsible anime fan with commitment issues, I declared it was mid and dropped it, and then proceeded to watch this garbage.
This is the story of how I became the world's greatest hero.
Stop the cap.
2 years later, things have changed. I didn't have any clouded judgment or negative biases to throw at the show, so I sat down and picked it back up. And it was through watching Black Clover with an unbiased eye that I realized that I was hooked from the very beginning. What do you think makes an anime, or any media really, good? Most people would say the quality of its animation or how deep the writing is, but I would argue that it actually comes down to relatability. Any aspect of a show can connect with you and easily become, in your eyes, the best thing ever. And I definitely went through that experience with Black Clover, and I want to explain why. Black Clover was animated by Studio Pierrot, an animation studio with a pretty good track record, being responsible for shows like Naruto, Bleach, and f***ing ghost stories.
Think of a big black man chasing you!
And those shows look pretty consistent. But Black Clover is an interesting case though, because it's two sides of the same coin. On one hand, you get to witness some fantastic artwork that's incredibly faithful to the source material. And on the other hand, oh dear, it all comes down to one word: character design. That's two words. When you look at how Black Clover's characters are designed, it can be very difficult to create detailed and expressive animation when you have to deal with layers and layers of clothing. Combined with the harsh work conditions of an animator, it results in some scenes looking lackluster. I think a great contrast to this is Mob Psycho 100. Now, in all fairness, that show and manga are going in a completely different visual direction, but the variety in expressions and movements is very noticeable, with characters in Black Clover following a more conventional animation style. When people talk, they don't move. Meanwhile, Reagan over here hitting a Fortnite dance. The fluid and expressive animation is saved for hype and aura. I could go on and on, but I don't think it matters. Black Clover's art still looks pretty good. Since most of the fights consist of minimal character movement and flashy magic attacks, occasionally the art can go insane, and the art delivers on hype moments a lot of the time. I specifically remember the first episode had some really good lighting. They adapt the art of the manga really faithfully, and most episodes, especially towards the end, look amazing. Asta and Yami vs Dante was great, and the elf reincarnation arc has some of the best animation I've ever seen. I really like the aesthetic of them going all white and black, classic manga style, for those huge triumphant attack moments. I think the art style is fantastic, and it can establish his own identity with his character design and name design. I just wanted to talk about this before we get to my favorite parts. My favorite aspect of Black Clover, by far, is the characters.
Remember all that yap about relatability and shit?
Yeah, this is where we finally begin. I think the characters of Black Clover are very strongly written. On the surface, they're pretty generic, but once you actually watch them grow, you realize that there's way more going on. What makes them hit so hard isn't that they reinvent the wheel, it's that the show takes those familiar character types and pushes them to their limits. The loud, determined underdog, the stuck-up rival, the quiet prodigy. No, actually, f*** that guy. You've seen all these before, sure, but Black Clover actually commits to developing them. During my first watch of Black Clover, Asta's obnoxious and loud nature was a bit of a turn off for me, but the show's premise in general is what got me to stay, because the powerless underdog is nothing new, but it's the way that the original trope is used and how a spin is added to it. Asta does not have magic, end the discussion. He's just a commoner with no grand purpose, no gifts, no natural talents bestowed upon him from birth. Honestly, the only generic thing you could really say about him is his goals and his willingness to never give up. He wants to be the Wizard King. I wonder where I've seen this before. But his lack of magic is not just fixed immediately. And this is where I feel I can relate to Asta, through his act of working with what you can do. Asta doesn't wallow in sadness because he can't do what others can. His anti-magic is constantly used as an advantage. Not just because it hasn't been seen before, but there are specific situations where him not having magic is actually a necessity for a couple fights. I also have a habit of improvised maxing, but Asta just doing what he wants to do anyway sort of inspired me to follow in his footsteps. That sounds cheesy, but I used to be ragged on for not being as skilled as other people. But it comes to a point where I don't care anymore. I love how huge of an impact he has on the other cast members. And he even gets girls. Oh, I yearn for this life. It's through the bonds he's forged that he gets stronger and perseveres. Overall, I think Asta's a great main character, and I would argue that he is actually drastically different from other protagonists in the subgenre. Noelle's character is something I have a bit of a history with, as, to be blunt, I hate tsunderes. But like I said before, there's more beyond the surface. Noelle's issues are completely rooted in familial problems, and this sort of extends the story statements about classism and the dangers of it. But Noelle's family is full of assholes. Being born into such a prestigious environment and being the youngest can put a lot of pressure on someone, and pressure is a bit of an understatement. For every misstep, every flaw, every tiny little thing that fails to honor the legacy of her mother, she is laughed at, verbally abused, and treated like garbage. And the reason we feel bad for her is because most of her problems are out of her control. It's not her fault she can't control her magic. Being ridiculed or yelled at simply because you're not as talented as the people around you is something that I've had the displeasure of experiencing multiple times throughout my life, and it resulted in Noelle becoming one of my favorite characters in anime, period. She also coincides with my previous point about working with what you can have. And she's female, nice going. Noelle is a bit similar to the way Finral's handled, but it's more of a favorite child issue rather than whatever this is. I can talk endlessly about each character this way, like Vanessa's trauma as a child, being pressured to perform something that she had little to no knowledge of, how Yami's influence compelled her to ditch her abuser and finally find closure through her newfound family, Luck dealing with loss and Gray's self-identity issues, Yami being the coolest guy ever in Gauche. No. Look, my point is, the character work in Black Clover is something I really appreciate, and it's something I can connect with on a personal level. But, as we all know, nothing's perfect. Before we get into what I believe to be the best part of Black Clover, I think it's important to acknowledge the flaws. This section will be very brief, but I really hate Yuno. I know this isn't a popular opinion, but he just fucking sucks, man. The main reason why is because he is a walking asshole. You know how over the course of the series we watch Asta struggle as a commoner and slowly defy people's expectations as he grows more powerful and builds more connections as a result of his resilience and overwhelming resolve? Yeah, Yuno doesn't get any of that. We never see how he gets any of his abilities aside from the wind spirit, and every time he comes back he has some ridiculous new power or skill. Do I need to explain why this is stupid as hell? We never see how he got to where he is now. He just is. No explanation needed.
Yuno had once controlled his mana using the heightened focus he developed during a battle in which he was deprived of all 5 senses.
Okay, I understand.
The young magic knight was able to master a method of gathering enormous amounts of mana inside his body.
Okay, I understand.
Learned how to harness not only his own mana, but the spirit's power as well.
I'm becoming one with my Yuno.
What the fuck? And it sucks because it's a huge missed opportunity. Yuno is introduced as a stone cold magic expert who everyone has high expectations for, as he can just do everything. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, as I believe if you can make a character strong in the outside, you can make his insides weak. Maybe you could explore how high expectations can create insecurity, similar to someone like Longris. And that would make him the perfect foil to Asta as a rival, but we don't get any of that. I think what exemplifies my point the most was during the elf reincarnation arc. Instead of being possessed, he's so cool that he merges with the elf soul to make another Grimoire and break free of the possession. And during the battle against Zagred, he pulls a sword out of his ass. He creates a sword of magic by using his wind bullshit to gather the particles from other characters' attacks to make a sword like... What? Look, I think Yuno is the worst character, and he is truly the only problem I have with Black Clover. The rest of the story makes me forgive this flaw, but magic particles, remember that. I know I just said that my favorite part of Black Clover was the characters, and I still stand by that. However, if I were to pick an aspect that I believe was the highest in quality, I'd have to go with the heart. And by heart, I simply mean the story's ability to invoke emotions in the audience. But here's the thing, a lot of anime can give you hype. A lot of anime can give you cool fights, flashy transformations, and dramatic speeches. But not every series can make you feel like those moments actually mean something. Take Asta for example. From episode 1, he's at the bottom of the social hierarchy. No magic in a world where magic is everything. In the Clover Kingdom, your worth is practically measured by your mana, and Asta has none. That first moment where he stands in front of everyone at the Grimoire acceptance ceremony and gets absolutely nothing, it's embarrassing. It's uncomfortable. You feel the weight of the silence, and then when he's chosen by the 5-leaf Grimoire, not in triumph but in defiance of the world's expectations, it hits differently. Not because it's cool, but because it's earned. Which, it is cool, but shut up. And that's something Black Clover consistently does well. It builds its emotional payoffs over time. Look at Noelle. Early on, she's played off as the classic arrogant noble who can't control her magic, and the filthy tsundere. But the more we learn about her, the more it stings. Her siblings constantly belittle her. Her own mother died protecting the kingdom, and instead of being honored as her daughter, she's treated like a failure. So when Noelle finally lands her Sea Dragon's War in the dungeon arc, that isn't just a power-up. That's years of insecurity cracking under pressure. That's someone finally believing, even for a second, that they're not worthless. And then later during the Royal Knight's exam, when she refuses to back down and declares that she will surpass her limits, that's catharsis. Not because she's suddenly the strongest person there, I mean we all know who the fuck that is, but because she finally stops running from herself. The series thrives on that emotional persistence. It's about people who are told they're nothing, choosing to try anyway, for the most part. Yami is another perfect example. On the surface, he's just a cool, rough around the edges captain who tells everyone to surpass your limits. But when you actually look at his dynamic with the Black Bulls, it's deeper than that. These are misfits, social rejects, people discarded by the kingdom, and Yami gives them a place where they're not just tolerated, they're valued. A moment during the Elf Reincarnation arc where the Black Bulls rally together, that's family. You can feel how much they've grown since the early chaotic days of the squad just being comic relief. They're willing to risk everything for each other, and you believe it because you've seen the journey. Speaking of the Elf Reincarnation arc, that's probably where the emotional storytelling peaks. The truth with the Batoli and the elves reframes the entire conflict. Suddenly, it's more than just evil villains attacking the kingdom. It's a centuries-old tragedy built on betrayal and manipulation. The pain of the elves feels real. Their anger makes sense. And when the truth about the devil's interference comes to light, it's tragic more than anything else. You're watching the consequences of hatred being passed down through generations. Even smaller character moments carry weight. Finral overcoming his fear of confrontation, Luck learning that fighting isn't the only way to connect with people, Vanessa reclaiming her freedom from the Witch Queen. I sort of see these as emotional checkpoints. Each one reinforces the central theme. Your past doesn't have to define you, and I think that's what makes Black Clover resonate. It's very loud about its themes. It screams about hard work, classism, determination, found family, and perseverance. But there's sincerity in that loudness. When Asta shouts that he'll become the Wizard King, it doesn't feel like empty shonen optimism. It feels like someone is trying to rewrite a system that told him he didn't belong in it. And yeah, sometimes the animation dips. What is this sliding PNG? Sometimes the pacing drags, sometimes the tropes are obvious. But when the emotional beats land, they land hard. The fight against Vero is a moment where the Black Bulls prove they're more than society's rejects. The confrontation with the devil during the Elf arc is the culmination of generational trauma being exposed. Noelle's later growth in confronting her family is liberation. Black Clover understands something fundamental. Hype without heart fades, but heart makes the hype immortal. Tell that to a JJK fan and watch their brain explode. It's the reason why scenes that on paper sound cliche still manage to give you chills, because behind every punch, every spell, every scream about surpassing limits, there's vulnerability, there's insecurity, there's someone afraid of failing again. And maybe that's why it works, because at its core, Black Clover isn't about magic, it's about worth. It's about fighting in a world that's already decided what you're allowed to be, and choosing to stand up anyway. That's hard. And honestly, I think it's enough to make you change your mind about a story you believe to be mid in 2021. But that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. This video took way longer than I thought it would, as I'm sort of experimenting with a new YouTube niche that hasn't been done yet, at least to my knowledge, so I hope you enjoyed it. I will be making more videos like this, but they'll be few and far between. I am tired. In any case, let me know your thoughts on Black Clover, and I'll see you at another time. I think.